Good evening everyone, and thank you to John Innes, Kate Richards, the Fellowship Board and the team at the Royal College for making it possible for us to meet this evening under challenging circumstances. It is an honour for me to be awarded Fellowship of the Royal College, and I feel very privileged to have been asked to contribute to this year's Fellowship evening. I wanted to start by congratulating all of the other new Fellows and by saying how much I look forward to working with both the Fellowship and the Royal College as we explore ways in which we can contribute to our amazing profession. None of us need reminding about how dramatically the COVID-19 global pandemic affected every aspect of our lives. The pandemic brought a significant and largely unforeseen set of challenges to clinical work, which, along with the impact of Brexit, has resulted in a very difficult year for many practices in the UK. Some of the adaptations necessary during this time have been positive and are likely to stay with us as we emerge from the shadow of COVID-19. And one of these has been the rapid adoption of video conferencing technology, and it is on this subject that I've been asked to speak to you this evening. Shortly after lockdown began, there was an explosion of web-based CPD available, and practices around the country began to explore the use of technology that had previously been predominantly left to larger CPD providers. Online communication became the new normal for us in many aspects of our lives. And the term webinar is used to include any online talk or lecture where there is an active audience participation, usually in the form of asking questions via a chat function. I work in a large multidisciplinary private referral practice in the Midlands, and we decided to take advantage of society's rapid adoption of video call technology in four main ways: through webinars, roadshows, in-house CPD, and to increase our availability to pet owners. Our webinars are intended as creditable CPD events and so are made available primarily to vets and veterinary nurses through our website. They are scheduled well in advance and free to attend via a simple registration portal. The events are held in the evenings and occur in two forms: a slightly more formal lecture-type presentation from one of our specialists or residents, during which attendees are encouraged to ask questions via a chat function. We've had approximately 5,000 attendees over the past 18 months, which is an order of magnitude higher than would have attended similar events in person prior to the pandemic, and included vets from abroad, including Canada and Spain. We've also been running slightly more amorphous and highly interactive seminars with a problem-based learning format run by our imaging team, which has tended to include primarily radiographs, but some advanced imaging. This format is potentially expandable into other problem-based clinical clubs in the future. Roadshows are an adaptation of the webinar format arranged between the specialist at Willows and a particular practice, usually one that we work with in terms of referrals. The topics are chosen by the practice themselves and arranged at a mutually convenient time, usually in the evening. We find this format is popular and a great way to cement or foster a relationship with the practice, and particularly individual vets, which then helps when we manage or discuss cases together. It is so much nicer when you speak to someone on the phone that you've met them if you've met them before, and these smaller webinar events have been a great way to nurture and develop these relationships. Vets and veterinary nurses are a gregarious bunch, and I've had some very enjoyable and often very fun evenings over the past 18 months. As part of our adaptations to conform with social distancing within our practice, we adapted our weekly intern seminars to a hybrid format where a few interns could attend as usual in person, but the sessions were also made available both live and as recordings to those that were unable to attend in real life. These lectures are a key part of our internship education programme at Willows and are a real mix of highly practical tips and techniques backed up with the relevant theory. And once that new format was established, we decided to broaden their availability both in-house and within the wider Linnaeus family, of which we are fortunate to be a member. Once a month, we select a lecture that is likely to spark interest across all of our associates, both clinical and non-clinical, the aim being to encourage those who might not normally consider attending a seminar to join us. Perhaps a client care associate wishing to gain a better understanding of what happens in the practice, or an orthopaedic surgeon suddenly curious about the squidgy bits that surround the skeleton. One of our recent lectures discussed the origins, evolution and scientific literature relating to acupuncture and was very well received. The lectures are available live throughout the Linnaeus family at both referral and primary care level, and then they're stored in our in-house library as a reference resource or for repeat broadcast. We hope to be able to persuade other practices within the group to offer seminars in this time slot in the future and make this a truly group-wide initiative. The final format that we've explored has been to try and make our sales available to the general public, and this has been a more recent venture and is a pre-publicised live event lasting around 30 minutes where two clinicians will have an unscripted discussion on one or two topics. There is a strong emphasis on audience participation via typed questions, and the sessions have been successful as both live events and in their recorded format, reaching an average of around 75,000 people per event. Although, as is typical of the internet though, some of these will have been immediately clicked away to something else that caught their eye, like an amusing cat. This screenshot was obtained recently during a discussion of stick-induced oropharyngeal injuries between myself and another surgeon, and we had a really good number of very relevant questions put to us. Now, we are definitely not unique in how we've embraced this technology, but our use does serve to illustrate how versatile this format is, and it seems likely that it will continue to remain relevant in some form due to the advantages that it brings. Webinars mean that both the clinicians and the CPD we can provide are much more accessible than ever before. There is no need to drive to a venue in the evening. One can listen at home after a day at work, feet up with a glass of wine. You can even get on with some easy tasks, provided you are careful with your microphone and camera settings. Emphasised by the apocryphal tale of the Italian chap who attended a meeting of his own town council whilst having a shower and sadly forgot to switch off his camera or keep an eye on his increasingly distressed text messages. Some delegates have reported finding it easier to engage as they are not distracted by others in the room or being in an unfamiliar environment. The events inevitably have a wider geographical potential and are not just limited to those with the energy or means to drive to a venue. Research and my own experience would suggest that we actually get more questions from delegates as they prefer to ask questions in a chat room rather than in front of a room full of people. As a surgeon, I tend to show lots of videos and photographs, and the webinar format means that these are likely to be viewed on high quality screens and less susceptible to the vagaries of the projector. The format is also potentially more environmentally friendly due to the reduced transport requirements and can come at a lower cost both to the organising body and the attendees. And these factors have all combined to increase the attendance numbers for our Willows meetings and has increased attendance to many veterinary congresses this year. I was involved in the 2021 BSAVA Congress, which recorded an increase in attendance of between 40 and 65%, depending on which session we were looking at, when compared to face-to-face meetings. But we also need to consider the negative aspects of webinars, which includes the loss of human contact. Clearly, digital contact has been better than none during the lockdowns, but most would agree that in-person interactions are more rewarding. It is of course possible that this will vary between generations and that the younger members of the profession would not see this as such a big negative than those of us that remember speakers loading slides into carousel or using acetates. Regardless of how old one is, being in practice can feel a little overwhelming at times, and chats with colleagues before and after a CPD event can be invaluable to exchange views, discuss a challenging case, share an amusing anecdote, and to remember that we are all subjected to the same worries and stresses as each other. I personally love an amusing story, and so for me this might be the biggest negative of online meetings. Webinars are of course reliant on technology, particularly having a compatible phone, computer or tablet, and on having access to the internet. One thing that I and many of my fellow speakers have had to realise is that there is a need to be more animated and to make more effort to engage the audience using our voices and facial expressions than is perhaps necessary in real life. And this can take time to develop. You will have to make your own assessment on how I am progressing in this regard. Being at home can risk being more distracted and even risk missing the webinar broadcast entirely. As anyone with a partner, children, pets, housemates, neighbours will know, an increase and a reduced engagement has been reported in surveys, despite also being in the positive column. On the face of it, well, a webinar library seems only to be a positive thing. Having 24-hour-a-day access to high-quality lectures as a resource is amazing. But like all sources of information on the internet, we need to learn how to appraise the quality of that information and assess whether the information is suitably up to date. Most will agree that webinars are here to stay in veterinary practice, although our reliance on them seems likely to evolve over time as we venture back out into the real world. The difficulty in assessing engagement when delivering webinars makes the gathering and analysis of feedback essential for both the delegate and the host to maximise the quality of the experience. One issue I have had when persuading colleagues to give webinars relates to copyright, particularly with recorded webinars, and the concern that once the recording is handed over, the speaker loses control of the content. Recordings allow the potential for the material to be sold on and to continue to be available after the information has become obsolete. This will perhaps need to be looked at in more detail moving forward to safeguard both the attendees and the speakers. It seems likely to me that over the next few years, as people remain reluctant to travel, and perhaps in the longer term, that we will become familiar with hybrid meetings. These would be congresses and CPD events that can be attended in person, face-to-face, with all of the advantages that this brings, but that are also broadcast live and recorded in order to harness the best of both worlds. These congresses might have 2 registration options, and there would likely be much higher attendance numbers overall. However, there is a significant danger that hybridisation will come at a cost in terms of numbers attending in person, with implications for both the financial viability of the real-life components of the conference as well as the social aspects of the meeting. It will be interesting to see how this pans out over the next few years. Before March 2020, I had resisted a move away from live seminars, and I have to admit to some reluctance when we first began discussing the use of digital conferencing at Willows. However, I have thoroughly enjoyed the webinars, roadshows, Facebook Live events and digital congresses that I have been involved in, and I've found it extremely compatible with the demands of a busy job and being a husband and father. At Willows, we continue to benefit as a business and as individuals from maintaining contact with our colleagues in different practices and our pet-owning clients, and we are excited to see how the use of this technology continues to evolve. Thank you so much for your time this evening, and I look forward to seeing you all in person as soon as we are able.